just as I was about to leave, look, I started eating the apples. The seagulls. They must have, because what happened was I started putting my stuff away in my bag. The seagulls must have thought, you know, Sophie's not looking. Quick lads, make a run for it. Yeah, there's loads of them now. They're all getting the, all picking up the apples. Hope he enjoys that. This week I'll be mostly eating apples. These are quite friendly seagulls. They're not, normally they're all fighting over the food, but yeah, I think he's enjoying that. Well, that's all gone, look. Taste A, fights. Look, he's got a bit hanging out of his mouth, hasn't he? Oh, can you hear that magpie? There's a magpie. There's a bird. Oh, it's a little crow. That's a magpie. Give him a bit of apple. Hello, this is Sophie Lawson from SophieLawson.com. And this is episode 261 of the Sophie Art Podcast, which is a little podcast to do about the art and things with my co-host lilDENNiS. And today I am outside in the park sketching, because this is a spur of the moment one. It's raining, it's windy, and I was going to do this month at art class, because I've got some sketches and stuff to show. Hey, trying to talk with you a mouthful. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some sketching. Hopefully, it's not too noisy around here. I've got my microphone inside my coat. What I use as a microphone is my phone. So I've got my phone resting, and hopefully my coat is shielding from the wind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little sketch in the park, and I'm going to talk about art. So let's get into this one. So where's my apple? I've still got my apple. I like eating apples. So today is the week before Easter, and I feel like eating an Easter egg. What I'm going to draw, what I've got here is I've got a tree. It's a beautiful tree. I've got my camcorder resting on my bag, looking at this tree. So what happened is, if you're watching on YouTube, at youtube.com/SophieLawson, you can see my foot. And you'll be able to see people walking around, hopefully. And you might even see some birds coming down eating the apples. But what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to talk about... Well, first thing is, the shape of this tree is beautiful. Oh no! The lead's falling out of my mechanical pencil. Hopefully there'll be another one, otherwise I'll have to get... Yay! That's the only thing with mechanical pencils. When you run out of lead, right in the middle of doing something, it's a little bit annoying. Takes you out of the flow. Can you hear the birds? Sounds cool, doesn't it? What I've got here is I've got this tree. It's got a little nice shape to it. It's like, I love the way trees like bend and stuff. In a strange way, it's almost as if they're defying gravity. Defying the laws of gravity. But I love drawing trees. So what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to talk about... I don't know if this is like a midlife crisis. It's my birthday on Monday. Yay! Yeah. and I'm getting close to the magic age of 44. So next year I'm going to be 44, and that's a special one for me, that is. Because what I've noticed is every single year that ends with a 4, for some reason they're like quite, what would I say? I'd say like influential years or something. They're years where something quite drastic happens in my life, and they're normally like positive. So I've been looking forward to the year 2024 for ages, because it's going to be a good year, I think. But this one here, this year, I'm going to be 43, and I'm just starting to think, well, it's 10 years now since I started drawing, and I've noticed that the last few years I've lost my way. I haven't been doing any art. I have, but not much. I've said this many times, when I was working full time and I had less time to myself, I did way more drawing than when I've got more time. Yeah, it's weird. And I sort of think to myself sometimes, what happens is, it's the motivation, in a strange way, that negative of having a job, which is taking all your time, somehow it strangely motivates you to work harder. It's a weird one. But then the other thing is, what it is, I've just lost, how do I say it? I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'm collecting comics. I started buying comics because I wanted to bring my character Peter the Penguin to life in a comic, and my addictive personality has somehow, it's ended up with me buying comics. I've become addicted to buying comics. Now, I love buying comics, but I don't want my whole life to be collecting comics. Comics should be like a little fun thing on the side. But what's happened is I've just become obsessed with these comics. So I feel a little bit trapped by it, and I've just been thinking about loads of stuff. So I make loads of videos on YouTube about comics, and I've been thinking, is it a bad thing to be doing that? What I want is, what you want? Well, there's a seagull watching me over here. You can probably see that apple, and he's thinking, I think he's trying to work out, is it safe to go and get that apple? That's what he looks like. Oh, I've lost my train of thought now. That's it. I was thinking to myself, well, when I started drawing for about a year, I got 2 things. One is addictive personality, because it's a negative and a positive. If you channel that addictive personality, wait a minute, what was the other thing? The other thing was, oh, I've lost it. I wanted to say something then. It was something to do with, that's it, when I started drawing, I was 100% focused on drawing. I wasn't making YouTube videos or nothing. So what's happened is, it's almost like, when I started making YouTube videos, instead of focusing on learning how to draw, I started focusing on making YouTube videos. And so what's happened is, I've just gotten away from drawing. And there's a quote on my whiteboard which I made up, and I said, I am happiest when I draw, so draw today. So, because what I was going to say was, when I started drawing, for that first year, I did nothing but drawing, and I wasn't on Instagram or nothing. I didn't feel like I had to share what I was doing with anyone. Whereas now, even collecting these comics, it's almost like I'm not even just collecting the comics for fun. I'm almost collecting the comics to make videos. So it's all gone wrong. And this morning, I'd convinced myself to basically quit YouTube I was going to say I'm going to quit YouTube until the 3rd of April next year, which is my birthday. And what I was going to do was take a year out and just almost like a monk goes off into the wilderness. I feel like I need to do that, but I can't do that at the moment because I'm working and everything. But maybe what I need to do, well, whatever happens, I need to get a sheet of paper and write on that sheet of paper what you want. Yeah. And then work backwards from that. So I don't want to stop doing the podcast. I love doing this podcast. And I think if I did stop doing the podcast, I would continue doing the podcast. What I mean is, if I stopped, let's say I stopped doing the podcast, I would still continue each week to record a podcast, but I just would keep it for myself. Because what's happened is, this podcast has become like a diary. I used to have a diary on my website, and then when I started doing the podcast, I stopped doing the diary. And then I only just recently thought about it, and I thought, this podcast is like a diary now. And sometimes you don't need to be sharing your diary. So these are all the things I'm thinking about at the moment. So really, what I'd love to do is say, right, I'm not buying any more comics, I'm not making any more videos, I'm not doing nothing for like a month, and just see what happens. Because the thing is, but I don't want to do that as well, because this all comes down to my addictive personality. Even making YouTube videos, it's linked in with my addictive personality. There's a way to make YouTube videos which like complements drawing or something in a beautiful way. But what's happened, I've lost balance. That's what's happened. So I don't think the answer is to just stop doing everything. It's a bit like, I've talked about this before as well. It's a bit like somebody, say, addicted to alcohol or drugs or something, like smoking. Like some people, they just stop, overnight they stop doing it. But what happens there is you can end up with like relapses. But maybe you do need to stop doing it completely initially. I'm not sure. But for me, it does feel like that's the right thing to do, but I don't want to do that. So it's all a bit confusing, really. Also, there's a doggy over there. Also, I was thinking to myself, I really want to go to art class. I want to go back to art class. I also want to go back to SVS Learn, studying with SVS Learn. But I don't want to go back to SVS Learn studying, because they're all about like creating characters and children's books and things, which is just what I want to be doing, creating like little children-y based characters. So SVS Learn is perfect for me, but I don't want to go back to it and end up making videos, because what happens is, instead of studying to learn, I'm almost studying to make videos, and I don't want to do that. So then I thought to myself, I can't go to art class and do studying, because I'm also working 2 jobs at the moment. So, and then I thought, what would I rather do? And I was going to say I'd rather go to art class, but the problem is art class is on at such a strange time for me. It's on at 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. And because I work at 3:30 in the morning, I just can't, I can do it, but I don't want to do it anymore. So the good thing about doing SVS Learn or an online course is you can fit it in and as long as you dedicate yourself, say 2 hours a day, it's perfect, because you've got an art class whenever you want it. And the beautiful thing about SVS Learn is they also have like forums and things. So you do get like the community aspect of it. It's not as good as going to an art class, but it's got. So what I'm thinking to myself is, again, I just naturally stopped going to life drawing class, and I've thought to myself, I think maybe now is the time to say to myself, do I just want to stop going? And if I do, what am I going to replace it with? And I'm thinking I'm going to go back to SVS Learn. So that's the first thing. But then I also thought, why not create my own art class? I don't see why I couldn't make my own, like basically what I do is, what I'm doing right now is every Saturday morning, there's some big dogs over there, some big massive dogs. They're like beasts, aren't they, some dogs? That seagull's still watching. If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to be able to see him. He's been sat there for ages. I'm sure he can smell the apple. That's what I'm thinking. I thought to myself, why not create my own art class? So when I first started drawing in 2013, there's this bloke called Will Terrell, and he actually, a few years ago, what happened was, basically he stopped making videos as well, like almost as if he fell out of, I don't know what happened there, but he stopped making videos, and he was one of my favourites. He was so inspirational to me during the early days. And then when I went back to find him, he'd basically stopped making videos. He pops on again now and again. But what he did, one of the things he did was he created a sketching class. So he basically created like his own art class. And I thought, well, why not? Why don't I do that? Because then I can decide on the time. It'll force me to sort of be self-assertive, and it'll be so good for your confidence. It'll be so good for so many things. But I'd probably be, at the moment, I'll probably be a bit scared. Well, I would be scared. This is another thing, see? If you stop doing everything, you can work out, what do I want? And then once you know what you want, write it on a piece of paper and meditate on it. And what happens is, if you keep meditating on it and really want it, what you're doing is, what I've said before, it's a numbers game, this is. You've got like fear and desire are entangled with each other. If you meditate on what you want, what you're basically doing is you're increasing the desire and lowering the fear. So for me, that's the only way I can achieve things that are scary. And I know it works because I've done so many things. Like I got my art into an art gallery. I transitioned into Sophie. I went to art class the first time when I was so scared. So there's so many things that I've achieved by doing that, and that's another thing, see. I've also stopped meditating. I used to do a daily meditation of an hour every day, and I would say at the moment I'm meditating once a week. Like the last time I meditated was Monday, and it's now Saturday. So basically what's happening is I'm making too many videos. I really enjoy making them though, that's the thing that's annoying. I almost wish I had more time so I could do everything. But that's the thing, you can't do everything. So you got to work out, what do you want to do? And I don't know if it's because I'm just about to celebrate my birthday. Maybe like when you get close to your birthday, you start thinking about your life or something. Because when I started drawing in 2013, I remember thinking, right, 10 years time sounds like a million years away. And I thought, in 10 years time, I want to be basically living off my art. I want my full-time job to be creating art. If I had focused on that, I would have achieved that. Because that first few years, like the trajectory of my sort of my art career, I suppose, it was massively, it went really high. And what happened was I hit this fear thing, because I started getting offers to go into art galleries and stuff like that, like different art galleries. And what happened was, a load of fear come up, and I said to my sister, I remember I said to her, look, I'm going to actually stop focusing on art for the minute. I'm going to focus on the mind. Because for me, the mind is the foundation of everything. If you get on top of the mind, everything else, it's almost like the mind is like the soil. And like everything else is like little seeds in the soil. So if the soil is, I was going to say if the soil is shite, but that's wrong, because if the soil is shite, the seeds are going to bloom. But if the soil isn't like fertilised, you're planting all these seeds, but they're not going to like mature properly. So, what I've done, it might be that this last few years where I haven't been doing much art, maybe what's happening is, without realising it, I've been doing exactly what I wanted, which is focusing on the mind. It's all I know is everything that's happening is it's all going to come together in a beautiful way in the end. But you can't just let the thing take you, or maybe you can. But again, I think there's this entanglement between taking control and being forceful, and letting go and letting it do what it wants. And maybe what's happened is I've let it do what it wants, but it's almost like gone off track. So I need to get control of the steering wheel and get my little car back on track. So that's it. So what I'm going to do, when I get in, I'm going to get a sheet of paper and write on it, what do I want? And I'm going to say, what's the focus? The focus has to be getting better at drawing. Yeah, because what I want to do is I want to bring my little Peter the Penguin to life. I want to create my own comic. I want to go into a comic shop and see my comic on the shelf. That'd be cool. Or I'd love to get an Imagine FX magazine and my art be on the cover. And it's started to rain now. I don't know if you can hear that. It started raining. I love it. So I'm sitting under this tree. My sketchbook is actually going to get wet. But it doesn't matter too much. What I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to go meet me mum in Aldi, and I think I'm going to buy an Easter egg, because I really fancy an Easter egg. So what I've wrote down, as I've been sketching, I've wrote down two little things. One is addictive personality, the other is distractions. So what I was going to say was, I've got to making YouTube videos part of the process of creating art, but not the process itself. Because otherwise what happens there is they end up distracting you from creating artwork. And then the other thing with this addictive personality is negative, because it's negative and positive. It's negative because, like for instance, when I go to, if I get an idea, for instance, of creating a comic, I'll get distracted by that idea, and then I'll become obsessed with researching comics, which is good, but it's bad as well. So like what happened here is I ended up becoming addicted to collecting comics, and that's my addictive personality, that is. And if you go back to the old podcasts, probably 3 or 4 months ago, I remember doing a walk and talk where I was talking about I just started getting into comics, and I suddenly realised that this was going to be trouble for me, because what they do is they do these variant covers, and all the covers are so sexy, and I realised that I was going to become addicted to it. So the good thing is I had an awareness of it. The bad thing is, even with an awareness of it, I still became addicted to it, and I still am addicted to it as well. So this shows how powerful this addictiveness is. You can have an awareness of what's happening, but be out of control. And that's the thing. This addictive personality is, if you don't harness it and sort of channel it on what you want, it's quite dangerous, it is. But it's really positive as well, because when I said to myself, I'm going to learn how to draw, I set my sights on becoming a realistic pencil drawing, and in 1 year I achieved so much, basically because my addictive personality allowed me to focus on learning how to draw realistically. And then when I decided I wanted to create little characters and things, which is what I wanted to do. When I first started drawing, my goal was to create my little characters, and then somehow what happened was I enjoyed drawing realistically. So then I said I'm gonna focus on drawing realistically. And then when I sort of got, I suppose I could say I got quite good at it, I sort of thought, right, I'm going back now to creating. I got bored of it, I suppose. And then that's when the love of creating characters came back into me, sort of, that my desire become creating these characters. So then I started doing that, and I realised I had to go all the way back to the beginning. And that's when a lot of fears come up, and self-doubts and stuff, which is all to do with the mind. This is why I said, this is when I sort of realised I've got to focus on the mind. Get on top of the mind. But what happened is, I can see how this addictive personality is a positive thing. So what I've got to do is I've got to meditate on creating characters, and work out. There's a dog over there, looks like a wolf. I've got to work out why I want to create these characters, and that'll be in a meditation. And what you can do is you can visualise it. You can visualise it so much that it becomes real. And what I think's happening now is, now that I've had a lot more experiences in lucid dreaming and stuff, I'm actually convinced that when you're meditating on something and visualising it, I honestly think you're actually going out of body, and you're going into either an alternate reality, like a potential future or something, or your energy body, your spirit body, is actually living. Well, what I think is, it's something to do with like the Akashic records or something. You could be going into the Akashic records or something, and you're experiencing the thing for real. It's actually real. And then when your energy body comes back into your physical body, you've got the memories of it. So, and what that does is that's what gives you the desire to go and achieve it. So what I've got to do is meditate on why I want to create my little Peter the Penguin comic. Meditate on why I want to get good at creating characters. And I've got to then work out what I need to be doing and what I need to not be doing. I also need to make sure I've got things in there which I enjoy doing, which maybe aren't part of what, for instance, let's just say playing a video game or reading a comic. Maybe what will happen is I will end up reading a comic once a week, or maybe I'll say I'm allowed 5 comics a week. There's got to be a way to do this where everything is in balance. So I've got to work out what, and then I've got to do it, and that's the hardest bit, is doing it. But this is where meditation comes in. I've been trying to do a budget on my comics for the past month. This was week 3. I did it the first week, and the second week I completely didn't do it. I spent almost twice the budget. Last week I spent over twice the budget. And so next week I'm going to have to make sure I stick within the budget. But I think again I need to meditate on that, and because what's happened is I've said to myself I'm going to have a budget, but I haven't focused on it. I've gone into the art shop, I've gone into the comic shop saying I'm going in here with a budget, but I haven't really put myself into the place where I've actually got a budget. So in a weird way, I haven't created the visuals in my head of sticking to my budget. So it's quite exciting in a way. But yeah, it feels to me like everything's just hitting a point now where it feels like, you know, that bit like when you're playing Jenga. I feel like I'm just about to take a block out and everything's going to fall down. But very much like how the mind is the foundation, I think maybe what I need to do is, maybe everything needs to fall down. Well, obviously what's happened here is everything that I'm doing at the moment isn't built on a strong foundation. Collecting comics, I've started it at the wrong place. So maybe that does need to completely collapse so that I can create a nice foundation. And I need to do that with everything. And so what I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking at the moment. I think I'm going to go back to SVS Learn. I'm going to get back to having a daily study, a daily studying session, which is, it's only like 2 hours. It's very manageable, that is. And then what I'm going to do is I'll have 1 day a week focused on, well, Wednesday's comic shop day, because that's when the new comics come out. So maybe what I could do is say Wednesday I'll go comic shop, because the other thing is you can daisy chain things together. So like for instance food shopping, you can do that on a Wednesday when you're in the comic shop instead of doing it on another day when it might be distracting. I've got hiccups here, so this is important. I always get internal burps and like hiccup things when I'm talking about something important. So what I'm thinking is go back to SVS Learn, focus on creating characters, which actually starts with the basics of drawing, because that was my biggest thing, was the basics of drawing is what I'm struggling with. I can look at something and draw it, but I can't draw something from my imagination, which that's all about basic shapes and understanding forms and things. So I've got to do that, and that's why SVS Learn can be brilliant. And then, but I want to have my comics still, but I want my comics to be like, really I would like to have, say, £10 a week on comics, and only get comics that I absolutely 1000% want, instead of getting comics that are nice. Yeah, there's a lot of things here that needs to be changed. I want to spend more time with Mum as well. More like quality time with Mum. I've got to do less videos, because it's either do less videos or have 1 day a month focused on creating videos, and maybe get like a month's worth of videos done in a day, which that's possible, that is. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm probably spending 3 or 4 days a week making videos, which is silly. So I've got to basically come up with a schedule and a structure for everything, because that's when I work. That's when I'm at my best. That is, because I'm quite an OCD sort of person. If I'm left to my own devices, I lose control of everything. But if I've got like a to-do list and structure and everything, and I've got the understanding of why I'm doing everything, that's when I'm most powerful. That is. So that's what I'm going to do. And maybe the podcast can just become like a diary thing. Like the podcast might become a weekly sort of, what's that word called where you, it's a word where you get this thing where you have a group of people, accountability, that's it. The podcast could be like a weekly accountability. So I could say, right, next week I'm doing this. And then next week on the podcast you say, last week I said I was going to do this and I did this. Yeah. So in that way the podcast is actually part of the process, which, see how everything can be quite beautiful here. And then if you're getting comics which are based around what you're also doing, which is creating characters. So if you're buying comics with beautiful characters, you could actually talk about these characters, why you like these characters, which helps me understand why I like the character. And that helps me understand what characters I should be making as well. And Imagine FX, that's all about, well, Character Design Quarterly magazine and Imagine FX, they're all about getting better at creating characters and drawing. So this is brilliant. There's definitely a way to bring this all together, and I've got to do it. The doggy over there. I'm sure that dog's called Sophie. That's it for this one. So I've done my little sketch, but this turned into like a sort of a sketch slash dump and doodle thing. And what I've done is I've drawn this little what it is, I've talked about this before on the podcast. I had a lucid dream once, which was more like an out of a body experience, and this bloke there, he gave me this grid which looks like the cross, and I've drawn, without realising it, I've drawn the grid, the cross, with a square in each of the 4 bits, 2 black ones and 2 white ones, with loads of arrows coming off of it. And the point in the middle of the cross is the point of balance. So everything else around it is how you find balance. That's what I've interpreted this grid as. It's quite interesting that I drew that. This is why I love doodling, because what happens is when you're doodling, it's almost like your subconscious is talking via the doodles. It's brilliant. But that's it for this one. I really hope you enjoyed that. It was episode 216 of the Sophie Art Podcast. lilDENNiS is at home as well. He's chilling out, he is. So that's it then, I suppose. All that's left is this week's inspirational quote. And this week's inspirational quote, well, I'm going to make this one up myself. What do I want? That's what this one is. This week's inspirational quote. What do you want? It's quite cool around here, it is. I say it's quite strange how all the trees are still like twigs. There's no leaves on nothing. Let's see if I can find a bird. Hey, there's some birds down there. I like zooming in on the oh, don't fly away. Oh, he's gone. Pigeons are gone. There's doggy over here. Doggy. Hello. Doggy.com. That's cool. Yeah. The doggy in the squid and the seagull. That was my view today, look. Lovely little tree. It wasn't a very good sketch, but I quite enjoyed that.